I haven't been able to make a video. The fear, some fear, has been stronger than my resolve to share what I know. So the fear is almost unbearable. It's like a shield, burning shield on my chest. So just that you know. So if I'm not going to smile, that's the reason. The second is what this video is about is an insight I had yesterday. So I'm writing a series of articles about what happened as a result of me doing my first landmark program. In fact, it wasn't a landmark yet. It was called Warner, Erhard and Associates, and it was in 1985 in Israel. Yeah, 85, August. So one of the things that happened after I did the first program, at the time it was called the Communication Workshop, Sadnat Tikshoret in Hebrew. And I did it in Hebrew, and my Hebrew wasn't famous. I could work as an architect, but the language of landmark is pretty specific and pretty sophisticated, and it took me a long time to understand it even in English, and my English was already good 27 years ago. So anyway, so I did this course. It ended on a certain day. Actually, it ended on Saturday night, and on Sunday I went to work, and I was asked by a friend of mine, Rachel, if I wanted to accompany her to the United States. She needed a female person to go with her to make it socially acceptable. She was depressed, and she was the wife of an Orthodox rabbi, so she needed kind of like a chaperone to make it decent looking. I said yes, even though I had no money. So she said, call this person, and I called a person who I actually knew. He came to visit them at the Passover. And I asked him to pay for my trip, and he said okay, and then I called him again and I asked him to pay for our accommodation, where to stay. We didn't know what he was going to make up, but he rented an apartment for 2 months, a furnished apartment. So anyway, there we were, and I of course had no visa. So I went to the consulate, the American consulate, fully knowing that the likelihood that I would get a visa in time to leave the day after Jewish New Year was unlikely. We had like 10 days. And I was sitting there waiting for the no, and to my surprise, the consul himself came out, called my name. I walked up to him. He's an elegant, tall, good-looking guy, and he handed over the visa and shook my hand. And that was a miracle. But the reason I'm sharing it is not because it was a miracle, but because it flies in the face of everything that people who teach positive thinking or avoiding negativity teach. So every thought in my mind was, no way, this is not going to happen. My parents were active communists. My father was in the Hungarian government. They were founding members of the Hungarian Communist Party. My last boyfriend in Hungary was head of the technical intelligence of the Hungarian army. There's I'm not a desirable person in the United States. And I had no money. So actually getting a visa would put me in a position where I have to work my ass off and borrow money and borrow winter clothes and all that because I had nothing to my name. I was an architect working for the city of Jerusalem. I made alternating between $250 and $500 a month. And that period was pretty much the $250 a month. The inflation was making all that difference. And yet, I got the visa. So why wouldn't positive thinking work? See, positive thinking addresses the part of consciousness that is above the waterline. Under the waterline is all the thoughts that are suppressed. 90% in fact. Just like that's why they bring the iceberg as an analogy. And because they are suppressed, and because they are underwater, and because they are unconscious, they are minimum 9 times stronger. Which means if you have a thought in the unconscious and the opposite thought in the conscious, it's always the unconscious that wins. So on the conscious, in the 10%, I was thinking, no way, it will never happen. In the subconscious, on the other hand, just because I had a huge revelation that I'm not a victim, that I wasn't abused, that I wasn't not deserving, I suddenly had space, like an elbow room, for miracles. And that is the biggest difference between positive thinking and people who are transformational workers. Transformation directly affects not your conscious. It affects your other than conscious, the 90%. Now, what would make a transformational program not work on you is if you think that it is to feed your conscious mind. Which means if you are there to understand, to integrate it into what you already know, you are never going to have a transformation. Why? Because transformation, as I said, is only possible when the knowledge somehow creates an alteration in the subterranean, in the sub-water, in the 90% other than conscious mind. And if you listen to what somebody like me say, then you are not going to be able to affect the other than conscious. Why? Because the mind will filter out every single element of the speaking that could affect the other than conscious mind. So how does that work? You get an insight. But insight is not a conscious mind phenomenon. Insight, like a glimpse, is an other than conscious mind phenomenon, which means somehow with the conscious mind, not through understanding, but through, what was that? You actually get a glimpse of what's hidden under the water level. And sometimes it's so silly, or it's so stupid, or it's so counterintuitive, or it's so moronic, it's not even funny. And when you can see that, then you, as a result of that insight, can have a transformation. Will you always have a transformation when you have an insight? No. See, an insight is still a dime a dozen. Even though it's very transformational, it is still a dime a dozen. An insight needs to be taken home. So for instance, today I had an insight why I am not able to charge more money for my services, for my programs. I've had that insight before, but today it was like really, really strong insight, and I actually cried. That's a good indication that somehow something from the unconscious bubbled up, and I have a real insight. Would I consider that a breakthrough? No. Unless suddenly I am free. I mean free to charge what is the worth, like a combination of what my programs are worth and what the public can afford. It's not kind of a combination number. I am not going to be able to claim that I had a breakthrough. I just had an insight, a dime a dozen, and that's that. So which means that after you had a breakthrough, you need to take it home. You actually need to create an action from it that is discontinuous with your past. And the kind of action that preferably you can't go back from it. Because having the same breakthrough again is harder the second time. Now the mind knows about it, and the mind is not your friend. The mind doesn't want you to have breakthroughs. The mind wants you to stay the same. The mind is your enemy. The mind was created by society, and when you have a breakthrough, suddenly you are not as socially acceptable as before, because you are suddenly an individual with some power. So you see, all that positivity and all that dealing with the conscious mind and all that understanding and all the education you have had, where you want to use the mind and the intellect, is you're an enemy, and you are not going to be able to benefit from anything that would take you closer to what you really would like. Peace of mind, power, joy, etc. It's not possible. See, unless something in the other than conscious mind changes, and as a result of that your actions change. No results, no peace of mind, no happiness, no joy. Too bad. And this is it for today. And of course visit my website, yourvibration.com, and I'm just starting a new series called mavencall.com, where I'm going to share in a membership site for money my private conversations with friends and clients that are pretty revealing, and because I set them in a conversation, now I can't write them. So a lot of the knowledge that I have a glimpse at, that I was given by source, are hidden gems in those calls. Okay, it's not quite ready yet. I need an editor, that's the truth. Okay? Alright, if you are an editor and you want to volunteer, at this point I don't have money, then I'd like to hear from you. Okay? Thank you, and have a great day.